So I know I've talked about the 3DS XL a little bit, but I haven't gone much into my personal opinions on it. Now, I believe I already mentioned that at the Nintendo World Store when they were having the E3 2012 viewing party, like right after the main presentation ended, there was already rumors spreading in the store that Nintendo had a 3DS redesign in Los Angeles under lock and key, that they're ready to show if Sony had pushed the Vita more and been more aggressive with that, but that wasn't the case. So Nintendo chose to keep that close to their chest for a bit longer. And really, aside from that, my personal opinions on it, I'm really not bothered by it. I mean, I know being an early adopter of the 3DS that there's eventually going to be a new model or a different design, but there's really less reason to be upset about the 3DS XL than really any previous Nintendo handheld reiteration, like the like with the Game Boy SP, with the Game Boy Advance SP. That made the original model effectively obsolete. By 2001, you demand a light in your system when you have games that have dark color palettes like Metroid Fusion and Castlevania that you could barely see unless you're sitting directly under a lamp. And in the clamshell design that protects the screen, that was an improvement as to make the original. There was once they came out with the SP, they really stopped manufacturing the original Game Boy Advance. With the Nintendo DS, it wasn't the prettiest design, especially compared to its direct competition, the PSP. And then they redesigned it a little over a year later. Was it maybe 2 years later? It came launched November 2004, 5. I think it was like mid 2006 the DS Lite came out in America, and it was very recent. It was almost like the original. I actually believe that the Nintendo DS was really sort of made as sort of cheaper and with less resources and less expensive screens, so that if it was a flop, that it wouldn't have been so damaging to Nintendo's losses. But once it was established as a successful platform, Nintendo sort of came out and made the more advanced version of the DS, being the DS Lite. And the DS Lite, once they came out with that, they stopped making the Nintendo DS, and the DS Lite became the de facto standard model for most of the DS family's lifespan. And so like it's it basically made the original one. It didn't make it obsolete, but it's enough of an improvement that you could reasonably ask why wasn't this the original model. And the DSi, that was basically Nintendo starting to sort of a test bed for a more online connected Nintendo handheld. And I really skipped out on that at the time. I didn't buy a DSi XL till after the 3DS was out. And the XL was just a larger version of the DSi. So and then so if you just bought a DSi and then they announced the XL, or if you just they announced the 3DS, I think the week the XL came out in the US. So in those situations, I can understand being displeased with announcing a new model or a new design. But with the 3DS and the 3DS XL, the 3DS XL has no special features that the original 3DS doesn't have. It has no new functions. It's just an option, just a larger option for, I guess, would be ideal if you sort of, if you travel with like a backpack anyway that you'd have like a notebook computer in, and or something like that, or if you just mainly play at home, or it's just an option to have a larger screen to play at home that it's significantly less portable. I mean, I have a DSi, I mean an XL. I love it, but I don't carry it with me that often. And the utility of those bigger screens. I mean, I can't even play my DS Lite after getting used to the DSi XL, but really the larger screens, it does not fit well into my lifestyle as to how I play and how I move with my systems. So as much as I love the games probably look beautiful on those big screens, especially with the 3D and all that, but it's not that enough of a big deal that I'd go out and buy it. But the main controversy about the 3DS XL, is the fact that there's not a second analog stick built into it. And okay, I'm gonna be frank. The main genres of games I end up playing or being interested in tend to be platformers and arcade games, and so none of those are and then that goes both on portables and when it comes to home consoles. So having dual analog, like there's some genres where having two analog sticks is just sort of the de facto setup for how you play, like first person and third person shooters and certain action games where you're relying on a lot of dynamic camera control in addition to moving your character. Uh, I've got really on the DS since the original DS series, the touchscreen has sort of become the substitute for having a second analog stick, and apparently, really, I didn't see much controversy with that with the DS, but suddenly with the 3DS, there's a lot, like with Kid Icarus Uprising, there was a lot of people who were upset, like basically seemingly upset over the idea of holding the system in one hand and the stylus in the other. Now, there are aspects of how Kid Icarus specifically controlled that sort of added to that controversy or backlash against using the touchscreen as a sub-in for a second analog stick. But my point here is, I'll admit that I'm not heavily into games that would generally be played with two analog sticks as the de facto controls. But just in terms of practicality, yeah, there's and the that big Circle Pad Pro thing for the 3DS, but that that seriously that destroys the system's portability. And the thing is, if let's say Nintendo made if they built a second analog stick into the 3DS XL, then that totally divides the 3DS user base, and that's not something that makes sense to do. It's not something Nintendo would want to do strategically, because now you're going to let's say you put the second analog stick in it, and developers are like, oh, now I have a second analog stick, and now I'm going to make a game that's reliant on a second control stick to have the optimal controls. Now that punishes all the 3DS owners who don't have a 3DS XL and don't have the Circle Pad Pro. It's one thing with the Wii. You could add Wii Motion Plus and have a game require Wii Motion Plus, because that's like you could buy that as an add-on, but the add-on, the Wii Motion Plus dongle, does not completely transform the form factor and functionality of the system, where now the system's almost doubled in size. You can't slip it into your pocket easily. The way you travel with it and move with it is different, and it's a portable system. It's supposed to be able to fit in your pocket or in your backpack with ease and not have a bunch of crazy contraptions you have to attach to it. So saying that, like, oh, now like the Circle Pad Pro is going to be like the equivalent of the a Wii Motion Plus, where it's a required add-on for some games unless you have the 3DS XL, it's not really going to work. I mean, I remember when the Game Boy Advance SP came out, there was a list. I think it was on GameSpot. It was on one of the major game websites, in the mid 2000s. It was a list of like the top, I think 20 or 50 or 100. It was a top list of the dumbest decisions game companies had ever made. And high up on that list for some reason was the Game Boy Advance SP, and the fact that they didn't add an X and Y button to the Game Boy Advance SP. And it's like, if you add an X and Y button, and now that makes the original model functionally obsolete. Now there's something that they're going to be games now that the people who bought the original Game Boy Advance can't even play now. And that's that if you want to worry about Nintendo, holding out on alienating their user base by releasing a re-release system, for all the backlash that there's been about the 3DS XL not having a second circle pad, now if you add a second circle pad to it, now that's really punishing the original owners of the original model 3DS and saying, now because you didn't wait and buy the either an upgrade that seriously detracts from the portability and usability of the system, or wait for a more expensive upgraded model, now you're screwed out of playing all major games to their fullest. So it really doesn't make sense for Nintendo to do that. I can't blame them for adding it, and I'm not just saying this just to defend whatever Nintendo does or doesn't choose to do, because if Nintendo added a second circle pad to the 3DS XL, I would be making a video right now saying why that was a bad idea for them to do. I don't want to have to worry about if they're going to come out with a new Super Mario 3D Land 2 and Mario 64, there's dynamic camera control, and they map the camera to a second circle pad. And then my only option is to either buy a Circle Pad Pro for my 3DS or to buy a 3DS XL. I would be very upset about that, and that's not something I want to have to worry about. Even if the new, you know, so everyone, it's just a different option. It doesn't make the original 3DS obsolete. It doesn't. I mean, aside from now the 3DS is the newest one, but it doesn't make my 3DS any less of a system than it was previously. Like with the DS, I had the original DS, and then the DS Lite came out. Compared to the DS Lite, my DS, the original DS, was less of a system. The screens are abysmally dim compared to the DS Lite. It's bulky. It doesn't. It's just less. It's just not as good of a piece of hardware as much as I liked it for what it was. But this I have my original Model 3DS. The 3DS XL came out. I'm not at any disadvantage or anything. Or it's not like with the DS Lite, and then the DS Lite comes out, and now I don't. There are games that have new functions, or I don't have access to the web browser, the DSi shop. There's no disparity in that. So I'm kind of surprised that it was announced when it was, and to a certain extent, it sort of signals the end of. Basically, it's Nintendo saying we're going to do whatever we want and forget E3. To announce that just a few weeks after E3. But that's my thoughts on the 3DS XL, and thanks for watching.